Please welcome to the stage your speaker for this morning, Anand Khanna.
Thank you very much there, Andrea. Welcome back. Hope you had a good big stretch break. Thank you for sponsoring our stretch break, the good folks at Set Protect. If you don't know me, then where have you been for the past, I don't know, X amount of years? My name is Anand. I am the manager of motion picture programs, not programs and services anymore. They keep changing my title. And I keep forgetting to catch up. I'm responsible for helping to guide the development and implementation of Actsafe's resources to the motion picture sector in British Columbia. Before we get any further, I would like to reiterate my acknowledgement of the traditional Indigenous lands that we live, work, and play on here today. We're all over the place attending this conference virtually, and I urge you all to visit native-land.ca, www.native-land.ca, to find out more about the traditional territories that you live, work, and play on today. Thank you to our sponsors for this session, WorkSafe BC, for helping us throughout this whole conference and specifically for this session. So we do have a couple of things in play as well. The Q&A, I'm a one-man show, this one, and I've got a big light in the middle of my screen, so I can't see the buttons properly, but there we go. We'll do that. Q&A, if you have any questions, please do use them. Use the Q&A. You can send me something in the chat, and I'll try and juggle both of those things. In addition to that, we have something that we use here at Actsafe, and I'm a big fan of this, actually. It's something called Poll Everywhere, and we're going to get into that a little bit, but to play along with Poll Everywhere, it's best that you have another device, a phone, iPad, tablet, another computer, whatever. If you don't have one of those, don't fret. It's not required for this, but it just makes it a little bit more interactive, a little more fun. Okay, so with that, let's get moving while I share my screen here. Oh, Andrea, sorry, did you have something for me?
We're all good.
All good?
I've just popped the link for Poll EV in the chat as well for people.
Oh, yes, it's thank you for that. So yeah, that's the login information. We'll talk about this once we get to it. Don't fret, like I said. We're here to give you a little bit of a primer on Joint Health and Safety Committee, specific to how they look on a motion picture production set or production, I'd say, because it's rather a little bit more, a little different than if you were on a production or a business that operated full-time type of thing. Short-term productions like film, a little bit different. So Joint Health and Safety Committee for Filmmies, let's go. There we go. All right. So first off, if you, like I said, don't know me, this is me, or a caricature of me, or maybe that's the real me and I'm the caricature of it. Okay. I'm the manager of motion picture programs. I've been at Actsafe for 8.5 years. Prior to that, I was in the production world as a locations department member, ALM scout, location management, production assistant, all of those jobs for the bulk of my 18-year career. I have produced, I have directed, I have production managed other people's projects as well. So I do have a little bit of knowledge about some of the things that I speak of. And like I said, I'm responsible for developing and delivering Actsafe resources to the motion picture, television, and commercial production industry in British Columbia. Okay. What are we going to talk about today? Well, what you need, and this will explain it a little bit more. Poll Everywhere is a website we use to make our presentations a little bit more interactive. So you'll go online and you will end up participating in activities and such. And when we get to our first activity, I will go into this a little bit more, but the information that you need to know is that website right there, pollev.com/actsafe. Put that into the address bar right at the top of the screen there. Do not put this into the Google. If you put this into the Google, you will end up in an endless loop of despair. www.polev.com/Actsafe. If you've taken a course with me before, you know what I'm talking about. If not, then you're in for something interesting and new. Okay. And if you don't have a device, like I said, don't fret. Don't really need one. You can just stand here or sit there and listen to me. Talk about what? Well, what are we going to talk about today? We have a whole bunch of things that we're going to cover. What is a Joint Health and Safety Committee? Who fits where in the Joint Health and Safety Committee world? What is the supervisor's role in all of this Joint Health and Safety Committee stuff? Who do I turn to on the Joint Health and Safety Committee? And do I really need to have a Joint Health and Safety Committee? So a bunch of things that we're going to discuss in our session today. First off, the basics. Let's talk about what a Joint Health and Safety Committee is. Well, the Joint Health and Safety Committee brings together representatives from the employer and workers, and it gives them a forum to work together and identify anything that might impact the workers' health and safety, and then work together to fix the problem, basically. It helps support the employer's duty to ensure a safe and healthy workplace. So identifying health and safety issues, recommending solutions to the employer on how to tackle those issues. That's basically what a Joint Health and Safety Committee is. Okay. Next slide, please. What is it made up of? And this is right from the regulation. A Joint Health and Safety Committee for a workplace must be established in accordance with the following. It has to have at least 4 members or more, if required by regulation. It must consist of worker representatives and employer representatives, but at least half of those representatives on the committee have to be from the worker side of things. So if we have 6 people, we have to have at least 3 worker representatives. Okay. There also has to be 2 co-chairs on the committee, an employer co-chair and a worker co-chair, and they basically help guide the committee through its function. If you do have any questions, like I said, just pop me into either the chat or the Q&A, and I'll be trying to flip back and forth and answer those for you. Employer reps versus worker reps. What's an employer rep? What's a worker rep? Well, employer representatives must be selected from individuals who exercise managerial functions. And we're going to talk about what managerial functions are in a couple of minutes. Ideally, these people will have the authority to speak on behalf of the employer and make decisions on behalf of the employer. Okay. Worker representatives, these have to be selected from people that are on the workplace, right? They cannot exercise managerial functions. So managerial functions are defined as having the ability to hire people, fire people, promote people, demote people. You have an ability to negotiate this person's wage, and you have the authority to discipline these workers. If you do any of those things within your employment with an employer, then you are not a worker representative, or you cannot be considered a worker representative on Joint Health and Safety Committees. Okay. So who falls into where? Right? Who falls into where? Who sits where? Executive producers, line producers, production managers, unit managers, those are the motion picture folk generally who fall into what? Let me get back here, you. My itchy trigger fingers pushing buttons. Let's try this again. This will come up slowly. So yes, executive producers, line producers, production managers, and unit managers. Generally the upper management in a motion picture production. Venue owners and technical directors, we're looking at the performing arts side of things. And as far as worker representatives, anybody from the workforce. And in motion picture, this can be from the grip department, the electrics department, the locations department, construction, as long as they're not doing any managerial duties. In motion picture, 3 representatives are generally assigned to the Joint Health and Safety Committee, and those come from the unions, the 3 joint council unions. So the Teamsters 155, IATSE 891, and ICG 669, they will identify a shop steward, and that person will be the worker representative on the Joint Health and Safety Committee. Okay. As far as the performing arts side of things go, QP, IATSE 8118, and IATSE 168, I'm not sure if there is the same requirement on productions, or I guess productions that they staff. If that is the same thing on that side of the union table. But for 155, 891, and 669, those are the only unions that assign a member to the Joint Health and Safety Committee, and that member is the shop steward of the production. Okay. Now we can go on to the next slide. So what about supervisors? So we have workers, we have employers, we know who the employers are. What about supervisors? Well, supervisors can be on the Joint Health and Safety Committee as employer representatives. Yes, no, or it's a little more complicated than that. This is where Poll EV comes into play. So there's the website at the bottom of the screen. If you type that into here, www.pollev.com/Actsafe. So once again, right at the top of the screen, as you can see there, hit go, and you should come up with, do you want a cookie? Yes, I want a cookie. You can put your name in or not. And then you get the question. And all you have to do is click on the button, true, false, or it's complicated. So far, we've got 5 people responding. We'll give you a couple of seconds to respond to this. Log on if you're having some issues. Hit me up in the chat, and we'll help you out. I turn my do not disturb on so that we don't get emails popping up. There we go. 6 results. Let's see who's played along and what you all have said. So 5 people have said, yeah, this is true. 1 person said it's 6 people says it's true. 1 say, hey, it's a little more complicated than that. Let's see what the answer is, shall we? It's complicated is the answer. So it is a little complicated. It's just, there's nothing really black and white about this. So let's see what we mean by it's complicated. There we go. Department heads, coordinators, because they have the authority to hire, fire, and discipline, yes, they cannot sit as worker representatives, right? But on the flip side of things, the unions, whoa, what's going on here? No supervisors for you. So I got our supervisor Nazi. The unions have agreed that supervisors should not sit on the Joint Health and Safety Committee as an employer representative. So this is basically the unions on the film side of things, and they don't want to don't want to necessarily muddy the waters when it comes to collective bargaining. So they have only identified the production manager, producers, line producers, executive producers, and unit manager, so unit manager, production manager, as the only supervisors that are eligible to sit on the Joint Health and Safety Committee as an employer representative. Okay. So yes, what does this mean? It means no supervisors for you if you're in motion picture working on a union production. If you are working on a non-union production, then yes, as an employer, you can assign or you can ask anybody from the supervisory ranks to sit on your Joint Health and Safety Committee as an employer rep. They still can't sit as a worker rep because that is the WorkSafe BC regulation, does not allow for supervisors, managerial duties, sit as a worker representative. But in a non-union world, they can sit on as an employer representative. Confusing, right? Complicated. Just checking on the chat here. I find I have to access poll using a different device or get knocked out of remote. Yes. So you have to, like I said, if you have a separate device, then by all means play along with the game. If not, don't sweat it. don't really, it's just like I said, something to make it a little more engaging. You can scream at the screen if you want and say complicated, and maybe I'll hear you, maybe not, who knows, we'll see. Right. Like I said, if you have any questions about anything that's on the screen, throw them in the chat. And this is for BC, but might be different in other provinces, correct? Absolutely, yes. So this is very BC centric, I should mention. It doesn't take into account national joint health and safety committees that are administered through the Canadian Labour Code or provincial jurisdictions as well. Okay. And yes, and thank you, Andrea. If you do want to answer in the chat, you can play along that way. There's always that. But hey, back to this. My supervisor, my first assistant director is a supervisor, but they are the safety officer. I want that person on set with me. How do we or on my joint health and safety committee? How do we tackle this issue? I want my department heads on the committee, and we hear this an awful lot, or I do at least, because there are a bunch of production managers out there who want the rigging grips or want the gaffer on the joint health and safety committee because they have so much experience and they know a lot about safety and they're great at it. So I want their counsel while on the committee. How do we tackle this problem? Well, maybe they can be guests of the committee. Okay. If you really value or input, and if you're in a managerial position, a production manager, location manager, or even if you're a worker representative and you think that this supervisor should be on the Joint Health and Safety Committee, they can come in as a guest of the committee. Now, technically, as a guest of the committee, they're there for a single reason. They're here to speak to something very specific, right? And they shouldn't have any voting rights or be involved in decision-making process or points when it comes to committee duties and responsibilities. They're there to provide the guidance. And you can have that as a guest, but they can't be official members of the Joint Health and Safety Committee. Right? Let's see if I'm all caught up on the chat. Okay. Moving on then. Who do I turn to? Who will you run to when it all falls down? And here is skill testing question. If somebody can type into the chat who this person is on my screen, I'll give you. We'll find some way to give you a cool Actsafe prize. How's that? Who is that person on the screen? Michael Andrews, first one in. Ann Wilson, yes. And her big song, well, not her big song, but one of Heart's big songs. Who will you run to when it all falls down? I'm not a DGC, or I am a DGC member. Barracuda? Barracuda was probably the big one, right? But this one was, who will you run to? And the one line from it was, who will you run to when it all falls down? So if I've got an issue on set and I'm a DGC member, the DGC member, if we remember correctly, isn't one of the unions that have identified a member to sit on the Joint Health and Safety Committee. So who should I go to if I have a problem or I have something that I want the Joint Health and Safety Committee to continue? And we're going to go back to poll EV for this one. Do I go to the AESC rep? Do I go to the 669 rep? Do I go to the 155 rep? Do I go to the employer rep? Or do I go to any one of these people? Who should I run to when it all falls down? Somebody has chosen any of the above. Ooh, two. Employer rep. There's dissension among the ranks. I should have mentioned that once you have poll EV on your other device, don't close that window, because then you'll have to relog in and put everything back in. So far, 4 people have answered, and we got 3 people saying you should be able to go to anybody, really. Why is this doing this? Every time I click on something over there, this does this. Give you a couple more seconds. There's one thing actually that I could have done and I forgot to do. If you want to scan the QR code, this will get you into that poll EV as well. But seeing as though you're already there and answering the questions, you might not need that, especially if you don't have a phone to scan it with. Okay, back over here to the chat. For people, Michael, I'll get to your question in a second. Let's see what the answer is. Who will you run to when it all falls down? Well, technically, you should be able to turn to any of those people. So here's the thing about the Joint Health and Safety Committee when it comes to worker representation, as well as employer representation. It's a committee, right? There shouldn't be a union hat. The AESC people aren't going to only respond to the AESC people. The Teamsters don't only respond to the Teamster people, because there's also no official UBCP ACTRA representative on the Joint Health and Safety Committee. There's no DGC representative on the Joint Health and Safety Committee. There's no background performer representative on the Joint Health and Safety Committee. There's no non-union representative on the Joint Health and Safety Committee. The committee works for the benefit of everybody on the work site. So regardless of who your union affiliation is, you should be able to go to anybody on that committee with a concern. Okay? Any of the above is your representative on the committee. Okay. What about the rep for your area of work? Now, this is a very good question. So when we break down Joint Health and Safety Committees, we want to have it representative of the diverse workforce. And I'm not talking about diversity when it comes to equity and diversity of color of skin, religion, race, creed, those types of things. I'm talking about diversity in all of the different job functions we do. So in a motion picture setting, we have multiple work sites, right? You have the production office. You could have a construction shop. You could have the lockups. You could have the special effects shop. You could have, well, you have on set. You could have post-production. So all of these different work sites need to be represented on either one big Joint Health and Safety Committee, or if it's warranted, you have different Joint Health and Safety Committees for each individual work site, which is, people's heads might explode on production. What? I have to have more than one Joint Health and Safety Committee? Yeah, well, possibly. If you have distant locations, say on the recent production of The Mother, there was a production office and construction shop and a big whatever they have down in Vancouver, but they're filming up in Smithers. That's a whole other unit. Maybe there needs to be 2 Joint Health and Safety Committees. Just saying. So, whole bunch of things to navigate through there. Michael, does that answer your question? You can give me a thumbs up if that does, or if you want to go on a little further, we can. Whilst you're answering, I'm going to have a sip of my beverage. I made this cup of tea at 7:45 this morning before I left the house. And where are we now? We are at 11:30, and it's still piping hot. The lovely Actsafe tumbler does its job, that's for sure. Okay. Any other questions on who your representative is before we move on? Nope. Moving on. Thank you, Ann Wilson. So now, sorry. Yeah, just a visual representation of the crew. Here's a crew photo. 10 bonus points if you can point me out in there. Now you might notice some other people in this photo as well, back from my days in production. So if you can't, you got 2 minutes. I guarantee you will not find me, but I am in there somewhere. The committee works for all workers on the worksite, is the idea. Okay. There, I'm there. Yeah. Good. Well, you're not wrong, I guess. Okay. Bonus points for you. Good job, Michael. When does a committee have to be in place? So this is an interesting question, and this will no doubt, if there's any WorkSafe BC folks in the audience, they might chime in on this one when I get to the latter half of it. So Michael's already answering the question. If you have more than 9 members, but here's the actual question. Fill in the blank, and we're going to go back to poll EV for this one. If your workplace has blank workers and will have for longer than 1 month, it must have a joint health and safety committee member. How many members is blank? 10 or more, 20 or more, 30 or more, or 40 or more? Once again, head on over to poll EV to participate. And there is your question. Twos peoples, threes peoples. Ha, 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 ha. Four. We'll give you 5 more seconds. 4 more seconds. Call it a fat 5, I think is what they call it. 4 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Time. Oh, time. Somebody changed their answer. How many do we need? This is what you voted. 10 or more. One person said 20 or more, 30 or more, 40 or more. Nobody chose those two. Or 30 or more, 40 or more. Nobody wants you, unfortunately. The answer. Is animation going to come up? No. Hello? There we go. 20 or more workers. So this is when you need a joint health and safety committee. If you have between 9 and 19 members, you don't have to have a joint health and safety committee. You have to have one worker representative that is the liaison for safety with the employer on record. And that is the joint health and safety committee. It's not really a committee. It's more of a worker representative is what it is. So yeah, between 9 and 19, as soon as you hit 20, you have to have a joint health and safety committee. Bit of a lag today. When it comes to longer than 1 month, that little red highlighted portion, a joint committee must meet regularly at least once each month unless another schedule is permitted by regulation or order. So here's a situation that we come across all the time on the motion picture side of things, and it's a question that I get asked constantly. I've only got 3 weeks in my shoot. So I'm a pilot. I'm a movie of the week. I'm a very, very short-term production. And I've only got 3 weeks. Do I need to have a joint health and safety committee? Well, let's look at this timeline I've built for you as an example. Okay, so at the very start, our production office opens. That's day 1, let's just say. Day 1, production office opens, things start moving on our production. And we have a very short prep period. We got 3 weeks of prep. So 4 weeks of prep. So 4 5-day weeks, but there's a couple of weekends in there. That's why we have 26 days. At that time, we're under 19 workers. So we're just ramping up. We're getting crewed up. People haven't started full time yet. But as we near the start of principal photography, that's when things really start to ramp up. And that's when filming occurs. Once again, we're looking at a 3-week filming schedule, 15 days, let's say, for an MOW or a movie of the week or a pilot. And it's at that point is when we have ballooned to more than 20 workers on our work site. Okay. And then we come back down after that. After principal photography is done, we go back, the crew is laid off, and we're back underneath the 19 amount of crew because people are wrapping out, and this is just department heads finalizing things and putting things away. So here's generally what happens. During the first 4 weeks, whilst we're under 19 workers, there's a worker representative that has to be in place to deal with the health and safety issues on the production. Okay. As soon as we hit 20, that's when we should have a joint health and safety committee in place. That's when we need a joint health and safety committee. Okay. And then back down again, worker representative. Okay. Here's the timeline for meetings. Technically, we don't have to have a joint health and safety committee meeting until the joint health and safety committee is formed. So that is right around the beginning of principal photography, possibly beforehand, because once we get into principal photography, we're not going to keep pulling people off of set to actually have a meeting. We don't have the time. So Joint Health and Safety Committee meeting number 1, slightly before cameras start rolling. 30 days later is when we are bound by regulation to have the next Joint Health and Safety Committee meeting. And that, if you notice the timeline, could be very close to when the production office is wrapped and closed and production is dissolved. So this is the question. Okay, I've only got 30 days. My production isn't, I'm not going to have a joint committee for 30 days. By the time I'm required to have another meeting in 30 days, will I need to, or will I be able to have another meeting? Do I really need a joint health and safety committee because of all this stuff? And here's where I turn it back over to you. To you. I don't need a joint health and safety committee because I've got I've got less than 20 workers on my site for 30 days. Will a WorkSafe BC order be issued against my production if I don't have a joint health and safety committee, even if it's just for that 3-week period? Yes, maybe, maybe not. No, they're not going to issue an order. Those are your choices. What do you think?
While we're waiting as a time check, it is 30 minutes in.
I know. I was looking at that as well. 30 minutes, and I might have to tap dance for the next 20 because we're moving through this really quickly. 6 answers on the board so far. Let's see what you think. This might garner a bit of discussion. We have, yes, absolutely. You'll get an order. Maybe you'll get an order. I don't know. Maybe not. You might not get an order. Or no, there's no way you'll get an order because you don't meet the minimum requirements of the regulation. It's an interesting one. So what is the correct answer? Doesn't say there what the correct answer is. Maybe this will help you. Will an order be issued? Correct answer is all of the above. Yes, maybe, maybe not. No, I don't know. This is a rather confusing one as well. And it all depends on who you have coming to inspect your work site when it comes to WorkSafe BC. I'm going to slide over to the participants list here and go down the list to see if there's anybody from the WorkSafe BC folks that might want to come and help me answer this question. I don't see anybody. If you are a WorkSafe BC officer in the crowd, help me out with this one. If not, I don't know. I've been told from some officers that they won't issue an order because they realize that when the production shuts down in 3 weeks, the order also ends up falling off of the books. So why write an order if there's no chance of it being enforced? Other officers might not feel that way. So it really, really depends. And this goes for not just this particular thing. It goes for a lot of things in occupational health and safety enforcement land. It all depends on the interpretation of that particular officer when they come to inspect the worksite. So there you go. I know I probably didn't answer any questions with that one. Maybe I muddied things even further. Can you have the second meeting early? Sure you can. Yep. The requirement says you must have it within 30 days. So you could have it if you want right at the beginning of the production before you go to camera. And once camera is wrapped and the production camera wrapped, you could have it a couple of days later as a lessons learned, and it'll allow you to do all of the things that you should do with your Joint Health and Safety Committee, and learn for the next time around. So yeah, good question, Sarah. Absolutely. You can have another meeting before the 30-day period ends. Right? Oh, I see something in the Q&A. What happens if there's an injury and you have not set up a Joint Health and Safety Committee because of the time frame? I don't know if they're necessarily linked. Injuries and the fact that you don't have a Joint Health and Safety Committee, they would definitely come under scrutiny for sure. Another reason for WorkSafe BC to look at you, look harder at you, and they might at that point definitely write an order, I would think. Because if they want to come down hard on the employer for deficiencies, it just gives them another excuse or another reason to write an order. Yeah, sure. So it could play into an investigation. Absolutely. Now that I think about it a little more, excellent question. Yeah, but are they really linked? Joint Health and Safety Committee and injury? I think it's more, they look a lot more at orientations and such on shorter productions, what the orientation is like, what the information dissemination is like, and what the production's health and safety program is like. And so these are all questions that we at Actsafe, myself and Natalie on the motion picture side, Dawn and Will on the performing arts side, we can all answer these questions, and each case is unique. My counsel or my advice is to have a Joint Health and Safety Committee, and it sets you up. Motion or movies of the week and pilots, it just gets you in the practice of what to do when you have a larger production that you are running for X amount of months, not weeks, right? Sarah, on a short production that starts with one worker rep, do they become a committee chair on the joint committee? Is this the same rep in the last portion? Another excellent question. So yes, for continuity, I would say that your worker representative in the first part of pre-production, before you go to camera or before you need a Joint Health and Safety Committee, that person should maintain some membership in the Joint Health and Safety Committee itself, right? Just for continuity. They don't have to become the employer rep, or sorry, the worker rep on the, or worker co-chair on the committee. But it should be somebody, and it generally ends up being somebody in the construction department, because they get there right at the get-go to start building sets if there's a construction department on the production. So there's that continuity through production, and then when they wrap out, they're usually one of the last people there. And this could be like the first aid, level 3 first aid person in construction is ideal for this position. As far as becoming a committee co-chair, that whole process is a little different. So what happens with co-chairs, it's decided by the committee themselves. So all of the worker representatives will go off into one room, and if there's 4 or 5 of them, they will have a meeting and they will discuss amongst who out of those people will become their co-chair, the worker co-chair. The employers will generally do the same. And on the employer side of things, it's a lot easier because generally there's one employer representative, and that is the production manager. So by default, that is the co-chair on the employer side of things. As when something that I actually didn't put into the presentation because I thought I would be I'd be going long. But one thing I can talk about when it comes to worker representation, we talked about the unions assigning a worker representative, and it's the three shop stewards. But what happens if we're in a non-union environment, or if we want more representation from all these other people? So we've determined 669, 891, 155. Generally 155, you could probably, that would be more of the offset, around set type of activities. 669, well, that's camera. So that person's generally going to be on set. And 891, that could be construction, that could be on set, that could be offset in the rigging departments, whatever it could be. But if we want somebody from the production office, if we want somebody from other activities, if we want a true representation of the entire production, then we can start adding people to it. And this is, how do we add people? Well, per regulation, these people have to be elected to the Joint Health and Safety Committee by the workers that they represent. So what needs to happen, and this goes to non-union as well as union, any additional members theoretically should be put onto a ballot if they show interest in being on the committee. They should be put on a ballot, and the workers very early in the production should vote for who they want to represent them on the Joint Health and Safety Committee. Okay. Any questions about that? I'll give you a couple of seconds to chat, or type into the chat, I should say. Okay. This is, like I said, the whole short-term production thing is very complicated. There's not one answer. To err on the side of safety, production-wise, I always recommend you form a joint health and safety committee. And you only, technically, to meet the regulation, you need 4 people, and you might already have them pretty quick and easy. Okay. Back over here. What's next? All this is great information. I hope you think. I hope that's what's going through your brain. This is great information. What's next? Well, if you want to learn more, we have a whole course dedicated to this. It's called Joint Health and Safety Committee Fundamentals. It's actually a WorkSafe BC course that we administer, and we've taken it and made it very specific to motion picture production and performing arts production. So we do case studies. We have a little bit of fun, a lot more of the pole EV type of stuff that we've been doing today, but more group work, like I said, case studies. We get really deep down into the regulations. It's not super exciting, but our facilitators, being myself, Natalie, Will, and Dawn, we all take turns in teaching this course, and we do try to make it entertaining. We do have some fun in it, and like I said, it is very specific to the motion picture sector. What do you learn? Well, it's very regulation heavy. Right. So terms of reference, meeting minutes and reporting, incident investigations and inspections of work sites, work refusals and committee evaluation, what the Joint Health and Safety Committee generally does, and what their role is with all of these types of things, how they fit in and how they execute these items. I should also mention one other thing when it comes to Joint Health and Safety Committees on motion picture work sites. Back in my days of production, I remember going to the Joint Health and Safety Committee or the Safety Committee's meetings, and it was every department head and every assistant on the show. And we would talk about safety stuff, but it would be safety on the next episode, or safety at that location, and we know where first aid is going to be, where craft service is going to park, what the access is going to be like, all of these types of things, very specific to the work site. That's technically, some of that does happen in a Joint Health and Safety Committee meeting, but when we talk about Joint Health and Safety Committee meetings, they are supposed to be related to the employer's occupational health and safety program. So things that affect the health and safety of all the workers on the work site, not specific to the shooting crew on the shooting location, that type of thing. So I just wanted to put that in there as well. The course, if you want to sign up, actsafe.ca/joint-health-safety-committee-training is where you go. Or you can just go to actsafe.ca and go to the courses page and click on it there. That's the easier way of doing things. So that, for me, is it. That's all, folks. Got any questions? Anybody? And we can open up the chat if you want. We can, Andrea, maybe we can invite somebody up on stage if they want to put their face on screen.
So if anyone does want to come up on stage, just write on the chat, unless you would like to call on people specifically.
Join me.
Oh, I see a request from Paula Faustino, so I'll bring you on up.
You don't get any new prizes for coming on stage. You just get to spend time with me on camera. That's all. And maybe that's a draw in itself.
So Paula, you might still need to hit your camera and your mic on. Or maybe it was a horrible mistake.
I shouldn't have said no prizes because, that's the deterrent. There's no prize. I don't want to come up on screen. Forget it. Oh, that looks weird.
So I guess any other questions, people can feel free to write in the chat.
Hit me up. We got 15 minutes, and I'll let you go early so that you can get an early break on lunch.
And have you addressed both questions in the Q&A?
Oh, I just saw that. I didn't know. What happens if there's an injury? Yeah, so we talked about that one. What authority does the Joint Health and Safety Committee have to make changes in the workplace? They actually have quite a bit of influence. I don't think they have an authority, but they could have an influence, especially if they get all of their ducks in a row and it's minuted in the meeting minutes, and the committee procedure is followed by putting forth committee recommendations to the employer. It's written and it's formal and all of those things. There could be a lot of pressure put on the employer by doing what, not necessarily what the committee wants, but looking into what the committee wants, right? I always say that in the course that taking the course really gives you the right tools, gives you the proper language to use when you're dealing with an employer. And if you start using words like to be in compliance with the regulations and this does this and that and the other type of thing, you start using words like that, employers ears start perking up, and because they don't want orders written against them, they don't want fines. Because safety is expensive, but I think I just saw this online a couple of days ago. Safety is expensive, but let's talk about how expensive an accident could be, right? So yeah, authority, maybe not necessarily authority, influence for sure. Who generally puts the call out to everyone for people to join the committee and the voting? So it's the employer that has to set up the committee. The employer cannot just go and say, hey, you're on the committee, hey, you're on the committee, until they've exhausted all of the other avenues for staffing that committee. So if they put out a list or a call, Joint Health and Safety Committee, workers, we need X amount of people to be in compliance with the regulations. Can you send me some people, and we will put them on a ballot, and we'll carry out a anonymous voting to see who's on the committee. If nobody responds, there's nobody that puts their name forward, there will come a point in time where the employer will have the right to start saying, okay, I've given you the opportunity. I need to get a Joint Health and Safety Committee up and running. You are now on the committee. You are now on the committee, and WorkSafe BC will say, yes, that's fine. You've gone through all of the other avenues to put people on this committee. Nobody's responded. You have to have a committee to be in compliance with the regulations. So here you go. And that's fine. Is that good, Sarah?
Paula is now ready to turn her camera and mic on.
Okay, Paula, what you got? Yes, that is the queen behind me. Or this is all my motion picture toys. Or actually, no, not motion picture toys. They're all squeeze toys up there, stress balls, except for the queen. I don't know if you can call her a stress ball. Paula, are you here?
So you'll have to hit mic on or camera on for us to hear or see you, Paula.
And while we're waiting for Paula,
It's all on. Well, we're not hearing you, unfortunately. Interesting. I guess you're just going to have to type it in the chat. I'm so sorry.
Let me see, chat or Q&A?
Do make sure that you put mic on and cam on in Remo at the bottom of the screen. Otherwise, I think we might have one more question in the Q&A while we're waiting.
Do we? I thought I did. Well, what happened? No. Nope. I think I got all those three.
Okay.
All right. Paula, anything from you?
Feel free to at least write your question in the chat if you are having some technical difficulties.
I can dance a little bit, but I got a bad knee. So I'm not supposed to dance. Dancing ain't my forte. All right. Well,
Paula's question in the Q&A if you wanted to.
Q&A?
Just dropped.
We're a health and safety company that serves the commercial film industry. Does that suffice as a committee for productions if we are hired? No, because the workers aren't generally on the work site or represented on the work site of that production. So yeah, you'd have to have people who are actually doing work for the employers, not work for for your company. Like, you're a consultant. Unfortunately, that's one of the things that that WorkSafe does look at it. And if you notice, a lot of the safety professionals that work for the companies up here, Warner Brothers, they tend to not sit on the Joint Health and Safety Committee because, yeah, they're not dedicated to that one work site. They're responsible for multiple work sites, so they can't sit on that production's work site, the Joint Health and Safety Committee. So yeah, good question though. Thank you for that. And no worries about the technical difficulties. Moments before we went live, the Wi-Fi here at Actsafe went out. And so we were scrambling to put cables on, and luckily I'm hardwired, so I didn't notice that. But I know a couple of other folks that are using Wi-Fi on their systems here, hastily plugging cables in to outlets. So technical difficulties. It's Saturday. Technology wants a day off as well. Why should they be any different? Okay, so it's 11:51. If there are no other questions or anything, I'm going to give you an extra 10 minutes for lunch. So thank you all for entertaining me and playing along. After lunch, I'm back in this room doing introducing Actsafe's newest course that will be launched in the latter half of March, Locations Hazard Identification. So there you go. Come and join me for that. There's also a couple of other things going on in the in the performing arts and in the joint health and safety field. And I'm going to very quickly pull the schedule up. And
I do believe you are in the MP stream with the Location Hazard Identification Workshop. If people are super fans who want to follow you in this room, everything will be self-care for the win.
Well, they got a little bit of taste of what's to come in that one. It's very similar, and it might be just as short, to be honest. So there's a couple of other things going on. Performing arts. So you want to be a meteorologist, and this is a pretty good little session that will lead into the final session for the motion picture side of things as it relates to responding in cases of natural disaster, tragedy, and such. So that's a neat little segue into there. And then at the Joint Health and Safety Committee, Reggie Hubbard will be presenting Self-Care for the Win. Safety begins with you. So that sounds like an interesting one as well. And like as was mentioned, Location Hazard Identification Workshop with me in 1 hour, 1 o'clock start. Thank you all again for joining us. Thanks to WorkSafe BC for sponsoring this session. And we'll see you after lunch. Take care.